Prime Minister, first of all, thank you for joining us on Conversation With. Now it's at the halfway point of your first 100 days in office. How do you feel about what you've achieved so far? Do you think you've lived up to the expectations of the people?
Well, in the first place, I found out the extent of the damage that was done by the previous government. And we see ways of overcoming some of this problem, among which would be the finance problem, the amount of money they have borrowed. But in addition to that, we find that almost all the ministries have been tampered with, so that they're not functioning as a ministry should, but rather they were all geared towards helping Najib to stay in power. So we have a need, of course, to rid ourselves of these people whose task is now not geared towards the governance of this country, but towards political support for the previous government.
So do you think this has impaired your ability to achieve what you've set out to do?
Yeah, I have to work with the ministries, and in particular the chief secretary. Of course, many of these people were tainted, but I cannot sack all of them. Then I would have no machinery at all. So I have to work constrained by the knowledge that some of them, their orientation has been changed. We need to make sure that whatever we do is implemented the way we want it to be implemented. And that means that we have to oversee everything that is being done in the government to make sure that it doesn't veer towards other intentions.
You talk about a lot of them being introduced in the previous administration. So are you saying all this corruption, all this problem started with former Prime Minister Najib Razak? Or was it even earlier with Abdullah Badawi?
Well, I must admit that corruption is something that is prevalent in any government, including during the time when I was Prime Minister. But of course, the level was not so high. But when the Prime Minister is believed to be corrupt, then you find all down the line, people tend to be less careful about whether what they do is right or wrong. They see money coming in and they see a chance to make money for themselves, and they have done this. So it has happened much more during Najib's time, because he himself is known worldwide as being corrupt and has been taking government money. So the others, I think, kind of follow the leader. You see?
You talk about Najib projecting this image to the world. What image do you think you project as Prime Minister then and as Prime Minister now?
I don't know. When I was Prime Minister then, people called me a dictator. They called me by nasty names and all that. I never thought it was justified. If it had been justified, I don't think the opposition would accept me as their leader. But normally, when you are in power, people have to demonize you. Whether you're right or wrong, they have to demonize you in order to fight against you. So I was demonized, but I never took a single cent from the government. I was not corrupt. I didn't care except for doing what is right for the country. That's all. But that doesn't mean that people are going to say, "Whoa, he's a good man." Opposition and the press will always, demonize any leader that they don't like.
But what about accusations that you practiced cronyism during your time and that you might be doing so again?
Yeah. If you study carefully, most people just say, I practice cronyism because somebody else had said it before, but they never investigated. But if you investigate, you will find that I have a need to make corrections in the between about the disparities within the community. And to do that, I had to find people who are capable. If you give a project to somebody who's incapable, it's not going to succeed. So you find people who are capable, and we give projects to them. Then, of course, I was labeled as practicing cronyism. But when those people fail, nobody calls them my crony. But when they succeed, that's when they become my crony. So the only way I can stop people from calling me, saying that I practice cronyism, is to make sure that everybody fails. Then nobody will say that these are my cronies.
What is your policy priorities going forward?
Cleaning up the government. That is my priority. And to do that, we need to change certain things. We need to repeal certain draconian laws. We need to change the way the Prime Minister acts. Before the Prime Minister was all-powerful, he appoints senior officers and all that. But now that will go to Parliament when he begins to see it. And then the Prime Minister will be there for two terms, no more. Of course, that is not for me, but for other people. I wouldn't let me there for 2 terms. But the laws of the country would be much more considerate of, must be in accordance with the concepts of justice. See, we want to have the rule of law, but the rule of law must mean that the law itself must be fair and just.
I'm sure you're aware that there's a sense that there's going to be an impending fallout between you and Anwar again.
I was there for 22 years. I had a lot of people who were against me, but I managed. So if I cannot manage, then I step down.
Do you feel that this government is different than the binational governments that you've worked with?
We're listening to the people. We realized that we came into power because of people power. The people voted for us, so we had to listen to them. And of course, they have various opinions, and we have to take into consideration what they think we should be doing. So we follow very closely all the comments made against our government. For example, there was this comment that we are getting rid of Malay executives. It's not getting rid of Malay executives. It was about getting rid of executives who were appointed not because they know how to run things, but because they were the friends of so-and-so. So that kind of thing should not be traced as racial, because they appointed a lot of Malays who are in the ELCs and all that. And if these people go wrong, we remove them because they went wrong, not because they are Malays.
Now, in terms of affirmative action, last time we spoke, you said you still believe that the ethnic Malays are disadvantaged. Do you believe that race-based policies are still important, and is that going to be a fixture of your government?
We have reduced the disparity between Malays and mainly the Chinese, but there are certain areas where we need to give Malays some kind of push. For example, when I was in the UK, I met a number of Chinese students. They were there because their parents were able to pay for their studies there. But I find that Malay parents, by and large, cannot afford to have university education for their children. So we need to give more scholarships to them because they can afford. I mean, the Chinese people are largely in business, and in business you can make tons of money. Of course, you can also lose tons of money, but when they make tons of money, they can afford. But Malays today, largely they are civil servants, wage earners, and wage earners cannot afford to send children to universities because it's now very costly.
So there will still be policies in place to help the ethnic Malays?
Yeah. This is not because we think only of the Malays. Disparity in any society is bad, even if it is single ethnic. If you have the rich very rich and the poor very poor, you are inviting conflicts. But when the rich belongs to one race and the poor another race, the potential for conflict is much greater. We have to correct. We cannot change Malays into Chinese, Chinese to Malays, but we can change their economic situation. We can help improve the economic well-being of the Malays with certain affirmative action.
I'm sure you're aware that there's a sense that there's going to be an impending fallout between you and Anwar again. What can you say to that?
Well, there can be a fallout between me and many, many people, but I have always been able to stay and work with people who were against me. I was there for 22 years. I had a lot of people who were against me, but I managed. So if I cannot manage, then I step down.
Prime Minister, if we could talk about your foreign policy decisions. Already you've made a few announcements that have caused a bit of a stir, one of them being the reviewing of mega projects. You mentioned the high-speed rail, and now we hear you want to renegotiate the water agreement with Singapore, your closest neighbour. Have you informed them of both these considerations?
We have not informed them yet.
Why do you feel the need to renegotiate the deal?
No, I think it is manifestly ridiculous that you should sell water at 3 cents per 1,000 gallons. I mean, that was okay way back in the 1990s or 1930s. But now, I mean, what can you buy with 3 cents? Nothing.
So will you be talking to them about going back to the drawing board on this?
We are studying the case properly, and then we make a presentation.
As for the high-speed rail, have they been informed as well about withdrawing the high-speed rail deal? Because Singapore has said that they haven't actually been formally informed. Have they already? Yeah, sometimes we make public statements without actually finalizing the process. And see, so of course, when we want to make a decision, we don't wait until we inform Singapore. We just say something. Of course, they would want to know, and we'll inform them in time. So it'll be any time frame for when you're planning on?
It's not so urgent.
Are you concerned at all about bilateral relations with them, given these decisions?
Yeah, I think whether we like it or not, Singapore is our closest neighbor, and we have a common history. And whether we like it or not, we have to live with each other. There will be little problem, conflicts and all that. We resolve.
Are you tired of people asking you when you're going to step down?
Well, they always ask me when I'm going to step down.
Okay, let's talk then about UMNO and Barisan Nasional. Their party elections are happening right now. Do you still think that they are a viable opposition? Are they a viable party for the ethnic Malays?
UMNO was able to dominate because it has the support of the other parties. By itself, UMNO cannot win enough seats to form the government, so it depends upon them. Now, all of them have left, practically all of them have left, leaving only the 3. And even among the 3, we know that UMNO is losing a lot of their people joining Pakatan Harapan parties and all that. So UMNO has shrunk. What is left is a group of people who still do not seem to understand the realities. But on the other hand, we need a good opposition. We do not want to have a situation where all the parties support the government. We want an opposition because I had always maintained that opposition is like a mirror. We can see whether we have pock marks on our face or not. But if you don't have a mirror, you think you are very beautiful, but actually you have a twisted nose or half-blind eyes.
Let's talk about that leader who they lost, Najib Razak. A lot of investigations going into him. What do you think Najib Razak is going to actually be charged for first? You've described it as already having a near-perfect case against him.
Yeah, I think for embezzlement of government money, for corruption, and for a lot of other things, disappearance of huge sums of money, and the appearance of money inside his account and all that. All these things show towards criminal acts. But on the other hand, if you want to go to the court, you must be able to prove every step of the way. You cannot say that he stole 1 MDB money. Why? Oh, well, we heard. That's not enough. You have to trace the money as it goes to 1 MDB, and then money going to him, to other people, to Jolo, to Caribbean, Seychelles. All that have got to be proved beyond reasonable doubt. That is what we have to do. Otherwise, you go to the courts without concrete evidence, and you say, oh, he stole money, and you ask, how do you know? Is that your money? Is that 1 MDB money? And you cannot prove it, you lose the case. We don't want to lose the case.
Do you feel you're being rushed?
Yeah, the pressure is on. People ask you, hey, you said that when you win, Najib will go to jail, but he's there, he's going around, he's got escorts, police escorts, like any other retired prime ministers. So some people want to see immediate action, but in a court of law, there is no such thing as immediate action. You have to be sound and have a good case before you go to the courts.
With all these allegations being brought against former Prime Minister Najib Razak, are you worried that he's going to be turned into a persecuted figure, an opposition figure? Because that's what happened with Anwar Ibrahim, and it worked in his favor.
Yeah, but this one, the case is clearer. The whole election was based on this accusation. So people are not going to say that, you are persecuting this man and all that. They know of the wrong things he has done. Their worry is that he might escape. Somehow or other, good lawyers might get him off the hook.
You think he's trying, though, to paint himself?
Well, he's trying to get the best lawyers in the world. He has the money. He can pay them.
Do you think he'll actually be around for the next election?
I don't think so. I think whatever it is, the decision has to be made now.
Whether or not to charge him, you mean?
Yeah.
I spoke to your daughter before. She said that when you stepped down the first time, they were very happy they had you back. Your wife is saying that now she feels she's responsible to take care of you, be by your side. When do you feel you'll be ready to go back to them, to step down and to return?
Well, when the party wants me to step down, I will step down.
Are you tired of people asking you that?
I don't belong to myself, Ever since I became a minister, my life is governed by the needs of the party and the country.
Are you tired of people asking you when you're going to step down?
Well, they always ask me when I'm going to step down. They did that before also.
But you stayed for a very long time.
Yeah, I stayed because I was still strong enough. But no, I'm in my 90s. I don't think I can last 22 years.
But you still feel that you have an obligation to the country?
Yes, it has always been so.
What can you promise them about the Malaysia they will be living in the years to come?
Yeah, we have not done too badly, but this is a multiracial country. We all accept that. It's not only multiracial, it is multilingual, multi-religious, multicultural. Despite the differences, we still live together more or less at peace with each other. Of course, there are little conflicts. And I think this is what they are going to inherit. They have to learn to understand each other and to forget slowly forget their racial origins and think of themselves as pure Malaysians.
Thank you very much. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
joining us on Conversation with.
You're welcome.